Recruiting-ish. Web3. World-class podcast. Let's get it, let's go. The topics of discussion you cannot get from another. Opportunities in Web3, we got you covered. Metaintro, been dope. Gotta thank you for the love and support that you give it. Keep it coming. We going up in jet speeds, interviews with the crews, making moves. Let's see, it's a brand new world of NFTs. Join in Recruiting-ish podcast, yes please. Join in Recruiting-ish podcast, yes please. Metaintro does not give financial advice. Information provided by Metaintro is intended to be used and must be used for informational purposes only. Always do your own research on the companies that you apply to and the opportunities that you invest in.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Recruiting-ish podcast. Before we get into the episode, here's a word from our sponsors.
Hey there, fellow podcast listeners. I'm Kevin Logan Jr., host of the Immutable Mindset podcast. If you're fascinated by Web3, blockchain, and disruptive technology, then you won't want to miss a show. Join me and co-host Adam Posner as we introduce you to an incredible lineup of successful entrepreneurs, builders, and industry veterans who share their insider knowledge, unique perspectives, and personal stories that will leave you inspired and craving more. Like Maika Isogawa, the CEO of Webacy, who shares her journey from being a Cirque du Soleil performer to a cybersecurity pioneer. Or Dave Schwed, COO of Halborn, who discusses the future of digital asset security and how the future of assets will be tokenized. We also break down complex topics into digestible bits, perfect for both experts and newcomers to the world of Web3. So if you're ready to stay ahead of the curve, subscribe to the Immutable Mindset podcast now, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Recruiting-ish podcast. My name is Alex. I'm your crypto recruiter. I'm here with Lacey from the Metaintro team. Say hey, Lacey.
All right, GM. Today we have a very special guest. We have Chris from BlockJoy. Chris is founder and CEO. He has an incredible background, 5 previous startups with 2 exits to Fortune 500 companies. Did I get that right? And just a little tidbit about BlockJoy before I let him explain the product, the offerings, and the company. BlockJoy allows you to deploy and run your own blockchain nodes on any infrastructure that you choose. Fun fact, BlockJoy also saves you up to 2 to 3 times your node operational costs. Did I get that right too?
Basically, yes.
Nice. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you guys. I've checked out your podcast. It's really cool. I definitely like the gaming angle on your other podcast.
Yeah.
Super cool. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So our audience, again, which I mentioned before the show, a ton of job seekers in our community wanting to know more about which products they should be using in their stack and at the companies maybe that they're currently at, and B, they want to know all about the team, all about your hiring processes, your recruitment processes, all of that good stuff. So before we dive into the latter, do you want to tell me a little bit more about BlockJoy?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chris Bruce, CEO and co-founder of BlockJoy. As you mentioned, we're a Web3 infrastructure company. The way that we look at it is, I've been in tech. I'm an old guy here. I've been in tech for 20 plus years. So I've been around the .com era, the Web 1.0, and then that was all bare metal servers. People ran their own servers, all the way to Web 2. Facebook and social media came, and the cloud became very prevalent. And now we're going into this other evolution of Web 3, where bare metal is coming back because you want decentralization, you want diversity in the network, you don't want all of these decentralized nodes to be just running on a single company. And so what we set out to do with BlockJoy was really solve that problem, is to reinvent what the cloud, if there is even a cloud anymore, what that looks like for Web3. And so
is there a Web3? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Is there a Web3 version, or have you coined yet a Web3 version of the cloud?
We just call it Web3 infrastructure. And the reason why I don't use the word cloud is because the reality is it should be decentralized. You should not have to build and run nodes and servers that are required for Web3 in the cloud. You should be able to do it yourself in your garage, or maybe you have your own data center if you're a big company, or maybe you can rent a server somewhere, a bare metal server. And, the number one thing is the cost is going to be reduced by a dramatic amount, up to 80%. And we see just even Web 2 companies migrating off the cloud. But it's very hard to manage your own servers, and all of the technology that people use to run blockchain nodes today is all usually built for Web 2. And so they're not well designed for running blockchain nodes. And so me and my co-founder just set out from the ground up to reinvent what that looks like. We rewrote everything from scratch, purpose built for running blockchain nodes. And we make it so simple that anybody that doesn't have a lot of technical expertise can, in fact, run a blockchain node. And why that might be important for job seekers is, especially if you're a developer, you want to be able to have access to a server to get the data off of, say, a Solana node or an ETH node or any of these other types of chains that you're interested in, and everything works off of RPC or APIs. And a lot of people just use consolidated services that they have to pay for. But Web3 is about removing the intermediary. It's about getting rid of the people in the middle that are sucking money from both ends and letting you do it yourself. And so what we're aiming to do with BlockJoy is make it drop dead simple for anybody to run blockchain nodes on any infrastructure they want anywhere in the world.
What does the user experience look like? So somebody comes to your site and they sign up. What is that experience from sign up to hands on the product look like?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple, and it's evolving as we go. But you come in, you create an account, you basically say, hey, I want to run a node. You select which node the type of node that you want to run. So like Ethereum node, you can say, hey, I want to run it as an API server or what we call an RPC server, or I want to run it as a validator. So I want to stake some ETH and earn some tokens. You just select a drop down, you click a button, boom, it's up and running. You have access to it. So it's very simple. And we have a very simple API, so you can do this programmatically, because a lot of node operators tend to run a lot of different nodes and a large number of them. So we make it easy for both individuals and big enterprises to run nodes.
So what does the team look like today?
So we're about 13 people. We're a pretty still early stage startup. We are heavily developer focused. So we have a lot of engineers from various backgrounds. So what I like is that Web3 is so new that there is a lot of skill sets that are needed to come into this. And what's great about it is you can have a different kind of background coming into this because it's really new for everybody. And so even development on distributed apps or dApps are different experience than what it might normally take to code different things. And so it's a great time to get in on something that's new and really help evolve this. And so what I think is just interesting about our team is they come from a variety of backgrounds. The one thing that I like about this time, so I'm a 5-time venture-backed founder, and mostly I've been in the States, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this company and my last company was the first time I actually built teams in Europe and basically hired from anywhere around the world. And what I like about that is that we just get such a great diversity of backgrounds, and as you know, when you put a lot of different things in the pot, what comes out is going to be based on the ingredients you put in. So it's really great to get a lot of diverse folks with different backgrounds coming in, because they have a lot of valuable input into what the project is going to be and what the eventual product will look like in the years to come.
Alex, do you have experience recruiting international candidates?
I've done a little bit in EMEA with Coinbase, and then didn't really touch APAC, but I worked with team members that would do APAC recruiting. And Chris, just to your point, ton of diverse skill sets. I think that was the main feedback. And in looking at your website, I like it how you guys put up the team, right? It's not anonymous. It's like, here's the team, here's our backgrounds, and looking at where they're at. It's like, saw somebody in Colorado, a couple people in like Ukraine, Poland, like you're definitely across the globe when it comes to team members. So seems to be working pretty well. Or do you guys ever have any challenges when it comes to, collaboration or things like that?
Yeah, collaboration is pretty good, except for my co-founder has like the worst sleeping hours ever. Like who knows when he's going to go to sleep and if he's going to make a meeting or not. But he's the wild card in the whole thing. But for the most part, yeah, we all have plenty of overlap. We use Discord a lot for our communications. I think the hardest thing, at least for me, is issuing stock options in different companies. And so this is another Web3 thing I'd really like to like. Why are stock options even the traditional way? I'd like to see DAOs come and be more, common. I would love to see stocks just be tokens, right? That you can issue to anywhere, and it's like somebody gets the physical token. You're not just some ledger somewhere where lawyers are keeping track of what your options are and things like that. But that being said, I think that's the hardest thing for us. So what's great, if you could even say that, but one of the benefits that came out of COVID, not that COVID was good or anything, but the benefit that came out of it is that the tools got better. So like we use a company called Deal that lets you hire people from all over the world, and there's a few of these popping up, so it makes it really easy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking we're also venture backed, and the process of going through issuing options, and then the idea of one day like how messy that would be for you to switch up that offering to tokens to being a DAO. That would be a headache
Yeah, for sure.
if you
Yeah,
if you
but
don't make that decision from day one.
yeah, but it's too risky to make a decision like that so early in the cycle. And so, we may be a little bit early, but there are companies that have done this before, and there are ways to do this. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, luckily we stayed pretty traditional because when the collapse hit, we're still a relatively traditional company, so we didn't have as much impact by some of the things that were going on. But long term, like these processes just need to be reinvented. It's like it's about this old world thinking, and everything's about to change if Web3 really starts to work, and we get rid of, like I said, I mean, for me, the big thing about Web3 is it's not so much the NFTs or these things, it's really removing the intermediaries. And so there's
Absolutely.
a bunch of use cases. Ticketmaster, like let's get away from Ticketmaster. I mean, if people just issue their own NFTs for tickets, they could automatically, for every ticket sold, could go allocate it to the venue, could allocate it to the art. Like the whole thing could be automated without anybody in the middle.
We just did a video on Ticketmaster because they're expanding their Web3 arm, and then the trickle down effect to all of the other music companies that are also building out that arm. And it's interesting to see how they're approaching it with their hiring process versus like more native Web3 companies that are in the music space trying to NFT the tickets, give the ownership back to the artists. And then you see the Web2 giant who did not build a company on that principle. And so
I mean,
I totally agree.
Taylor Swift should hire a Web3 team. I mean, really, like she could make it happen. I mean, she could today hire a Web3 team and build her own version of Ticketmaster, and everybody will be happier. All the artists will be happier, and all the fans will be happier.
Maybe we'll tag Taylor Swift in this video
Yeah,
and
please.
she'll see it.
Please.
So I'd love to learn more about your startup experience. We don't get a lot of startup founders on the show, and I do know that in our community, we have a ton of individuals who are either thinking about building their first startup, not quite sure where to start, or maybe Web2 startup founders coming into the Web3 space wanting to build something. And so it's always great to kind of hear that experience coming, especially from somebody with 5 startups under their belt. That's incredible. I'd love to hear about the very first startup, and then I know you you kind of have to say BlockJoy now, but maybe the most exciting startup that you've built out of the 5.
Yeah, sure. So I think so keep in mind that I started programming when I was 9. I actually started a company in 6th grade and selling computers. I would build computers, and people would have to come and write my parents a check, like a $2,000 check for like an AT computer that is a fraction of what computers can do today. And but I would say the first venture-backed company I was a part of was a company called Rupture. It was started by Sean Fanning and John Bedanza. Sean Fanning actually created Napster, so he is the founder of Napster. It's named after him because he had nappy hair, and him and Sean Parker, who you see in the Social Network, he's the one that looks like the face of the company, but Sean Fanning actually started it. And this was a company Sean had gotten into gaming heavily. He had was really heavily into World of Warcraft, and so he wanted to build a social network for gamers, essentially. And this is one of the skill sets that I think is really valuable. Is if as an engineer or as a marketer or even as somebody that's starting to get into this, if you can look at sort of emerging technologies and jump in early, like at this period of time was early 2000s, and Ruby on Rails became, it was like just starting to come in. And I had been doing Ruby on Rails really early. And so that's how I got to be a part of the founding team. Was like I was the first engineer they brought on. And from there we built the company up, and we ended up selling it to Electronic Arts. And then it came from a social network to, DRM and also their, pretty much Web 2.0 stuff. But that was really fun. I think one of the funny things was like we just worked out of Sean's loft in Potrero Hill, which every time I went there, a car window was broken out. They had this beeping sound. They couldn't figure out what it was. It was the fire alarm that nobody could change the batteries for. And they're all doing these vegan diets. So there was just like a trash full of smelly food every time I came. But it was great because it's like industry, people that, started companies way before I ever did. And had very good success. And so it was great to be a part of that. And so that's kind of what got my in. It's one of these things where it's not what you know always, it's like who you know. And I just got lucky because I happened to know an emerging technology that there was starting to build a lot of demand for and not a lot of supply. And so that's how I got to become friends with them. And then through that network, my network grew, and then it became easier to start other companies.
Well, Napster just made a comeback, right? Or they attempted to make a comeback.
They might have, yeah. I think it's I forgot who owns it now, but some big media company owns it now. But yeah, I mean, it's those days like Sean are not part of it anymore.
I saw an open role from Napster's Web3 iteration a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago now. I think the hype of it has died down, but that was on the wave of LimeWire also trying to make a comeback, the Blockbuster DAO, all of these nostalgic companies that have had such an impact on us, like throughout the years, making this comeback into Web3 and instead building the product to be owned by the users. And so I'm curious, we'll drop the links below in the description of what that news article was, and if there's any updates to where Napster is today, because I'd love to catch up on that.
In terms of the most interesting company, it's Sproutling was an interesting company. It was a wearable baby monitor. So like it was hardware. Like I had to fly to China, I had to fly to Korea, I had to work with LG, I had to make something that was safe. But that was a very interesting product because we predicted when babies would wake up. Like we use machine learning, big data, IoT, giant mountains of data, and helped to try and give parents an easier time raising usually their first kid. By the time you have one kid, the second kid comes along, you don't care. They could be playing in dirt, it doesn't matter. But the first kid,
is that still around?
So anxious. It got bought by Mattel and launched under the Fisher-Price brand. So I don't know if it's still around or not, but Fisher-Price is very adverse to any kind of risk. So I could just imagine they might have some concerns about it. So we'll see.
Well, you have some pretty big, you have some pretty big exits or pretty big companies that have bought your products.
Yep. Yeah.
So how did you get to Web3?
Yeah, Web3. Now that's the problem, right? It's something that, my advice to people getting into starting a company or actually just, like looking for a job in Web3 is, work on something you care about. Like I think crypto, the problem I have with crypto right now is it attracts people like this get rich scheme, but Web3 is in reinventing the way the internet works. If you stay on sort of the altruistic path, I mean, even digital currency is just reinventing how it works. And there's just so much noise and, big ups and big downs. But the reality is that the technology is going to have a fundamental impact on the way we live our lives moving forward. And if you can come into this space and find some piece of it that you're passionate about and that you care about, the adage goes like, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And like for me, being all these companies that I've started, it's always been something that I cared about at the time. The one time I started a company, it was a money grab. It was social gaming. Like we failed miserably. And it's because it wasn't, coming from a perspective of like something that I want to use, something that I care about. And all of our decisions became trying to chase money and chase, financial gains. And in the end, you're going to lose because you're not building a product for yourself. You're building a product to try and make money, and you'll never hit the target, really.
What I'm hearing, a great piece of advice for the people that are listening to this, if you're thinking about building a startup in the Web3 space, start with something that you love and maybe find a solution to something that can be improved in that space, maybe a gap that's missing in that market, and then ideate. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. I mean, to even simplify the pieces is like, find something that bugs you, find a problem that irritates you and fix it. And then you're going to make money, because chances are if it irritates you enough, it irritates a lot of other people. And there's a lot. I mean, Web3 is just an open. I mean, if you look back at like Social Network and you look back at movies about Steve Jobs and the early computer days and all this stuff, like there are going to be movies about this time today in 20 years, right? And so just think about that for a minute, that we're just at this fundamental thing. And so, there's so much opportunity for people to make a career change. There's so much opportunity for people to get in at the ground floor of something that, a lot of people had skepticism about every sort of turn of invention that we've had over the course of the internet. Lots of people had skepticism. And, but in the end, there is a real need for what is happening. And so it's just it's a great opportunity. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for people to jump and go. And even now with the recession, like, you just got laid off, right? And now you're panicking, trying to find a job, but chances are you got a pretty decent severance package. So you have enough time to experiment and try and like learn something before you go get a job. Go hack on dApps, try and make some dApps, or learn like social media. And like, I mean, that's the only marketing that's going to work going forward is owned media and earned media. And so, hey, you want to be YouTube, like go start making videos for somebody, get into social media marketing. You want to get into the crypto space, but you don't really know where to start with community. Like everybody needs help managing community. I mean, there's just a ton of opportunity for people that are not even technical related.
Yeah, Alex and I were covering the layoffs for a few episodes, and this was at the height of the layoffs, and it started to get depressing each episode. How do you take the beginning of the episode where we're reporting all of these layoffs that are happening and then spin it into like a positive episode? And so at some point we kind of looked at each other off air and said, maybe we don't talk about layoffs anymore
Yeah.
because it's really depressing. But the two big layoffs that just happened, Meta obviously just announced layoffs yesterday, a fourth round, another round is coming to the non-technical side. And I was just watching the news this morning, and BuzzFeed News is shutting down because they just laid off a bunch of their staff. So as you can see, layoffs are still very much happening. We're still very much in a bear market. However, like you just said, it's a great time to be leveling up your resume, learning new skills, dabbling in products, ideas, new tooling that interests you, because who knows, out of the layoffs could come some inspiration, could come a new tool set that will allow you to apply to a new job that maybe you weren't qualified for prior to layoffs. And so just piggybacking off of what you just said,
for sure.
it's a great time to be learning.
And to be quite frank, a lot of companies start and become successful in recessions. Because what happens is people, like investors, start looking for really good ideas and good concepts and not chasing the financial gain of the crowd or wherever the buzzy thing is. And so going to a startup in a recession might be a good idea because usually they'll have funding and they're a smaller team and you get to do a lot of different things at a startup when when you're early. You may not get the best pay, but you're going to get, it's like going to college in a whole new career, essentially. You're getting all these skills and you're not going to be pigeonholed into one thing. You're going to do a lot of different things. So you're going to learn a lot and you're also building your network. So I think those are all great. And, God, is now not the perfect time? Like I could watch YouTube for 8 hours and then I could walk away and start coding, dApps on Ethereum. I mean, literally, my only advice is don't get caught in the consumption, get caught up into a little consumption and then production. Like, it's too easy to like just sit passively learning something. My advice to anybody is like, whatever it is that you're trying to segue into, just start hacking on it. Like build a project. Like, don't rely on just your resume, build a portfolio, like work on things and show your work. Like there's never a better time than now to show your work. I mean, you can use your iPhone, you can take pictures of stuff you're doing, videos, you can put it up on YouTube, TikTok, whatever, but just build and show. That is my advice. And whatever build means for you, whether it's technical, non-technical, maybe you want a job in community management, Discord. Well, build a Discord server, record what you're doing, how you would set it up. Even though you may not have people there, you can do it now. Discord's free to set up. Maybe you want to get into social media marketing. Take somebody's videos, take Lacey's videos and chop them up into shorts and go back to her and say, hey, look, here's what I did. If you like any of it, maybe you'll hire me. There's so much opportunity now if you hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say it's funny because we had a couple episodes where this concept of like production before you're on the team came up in various ways, like you mentioned, right? Like if it's community management, start community managing before you're even a community manager for them, right? Like show your value and however that is. And it's again, it's an interesting thing that Web2 companies, it's apply, pray, maybe reach out to recruiters. You got to go through that formal process. Web3 is much more accessible. And like you mentioned, like you're a founder of a company, like you see what goes on more than Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook or Meta. So that's kind of what we've been telling people is like, hey, contribute how you can and find creative ways to get in contact versus here's my resume. I hope it works, right? It's just like such a different way of doing things.
Yeah, definitely you have to be proactive. And I mean, so many people get hired. Like we look and recruit people based on like projects. Like I'll reach out to somebody if I see an interesting project and say, hey, I really like what you work. Like in my last company, that's what I did. I found somebody that was doing a lot of work on an open source project that I really liked. And it was a project that I was working on. And I'm like, hey, you have all this experience. I love what you do. You should come join us. And he did. And then he ended up getting a job after that at the actual company that, like the open source project Matrix, which is a decentralized chat thing. And I was like, that's great. Like that was his dream job. He'd been maintaining, open source libraries that integrated with them. He came to us, helped us build some stuff. And then, he went on back to that. That's his dream job. He landed his dream job eventually, but that's because he did work. He, worked on that project. He showed his work. And I think that's, again, we are living in the absolute best time you have every tool at your disposal to learn something new, to do something new for free, and to go out and show your work for free. Like you can do all that. All those tools are available for absolutely free.
So on the topic of hiring and getting attention of companies, let's talk about your company. Are you hiring? And if so, how does somebody get your attention?
Yeah, for us, like I'm always hiring, right? So, and what I mean by that is, I don't. What I try not to do is necessarily have a set job. I mean, we do have open. We're always hiring Rust engineers and UX people and visual design people. But what I look for is I really look for people. Like I want to find somebody that's just good at something, and I want to like bring them on. Like it's just a different from my perspective of doing this. Anybody can email me, chris@blockjoy.com. They can come to our website and enter a form. And, what I tend to do is if somebody emailed me, I tend to look at their social media, look at GitHub, look at whatever they have and see if they have something interesting. And for me, what I look for is, and everybody's different, but I look for people that try to make it look good, right? So if you're going to put all this effort into doing the work, when you present the work, you want the presentation to also look like you put some thought into it. And so I tend to focus on things like that. People are looking at all the edges and basically every interaction with the public for them, they're trying to do the best work. And so that means if they create a video, they're trying to make it look good. If they create a website, they're trying to make it look good. Again, that's just how I work. But we're like we said, we always have traditional jobs that we hire for. But if I find somebody that is really good at something or passionate about something, oftentimes I'll just create a role for that person. And that's the benefit of having a startup at this stage, is that it's a very flat structure, right? And so we want to bring on talented people. And I mean, a talented person might be an artist that turns out to be a great coder. Like I see this a lot. Somebody was a PhD in physics and turns out to be like one of the best coders I've ever seen. It's just, you never know where somebody's going to come from. And so, yeah, it's just finding people that have super talent and interest and passion. I mean, passion goes a long way for anything, especially a startup.
For anybody that's listening and interested in working for Chris, we're going to drop the links below in the description so that you can message Chris and say hi and show him your passions and show him what you're good at. So dropping that below. Awesome. So for the next segment, which I mentioned before the show, and for anybody that's returning as a listener, you know that every week we answer questions from the community all about Web3 careers, Web3 hiring, everything under that umbrella. So this week we got a few really good questions.
My question for today is actually related with the topic that you mentioned earlier, which is the lack of positions, of entry-based positions and intermediate positions, because everyone asks for 7+ years experience, all senior roles, and as you so well said, many of us or most of us do not have that experience yet, but are looking to work towards that. So I'm asking, how can we achieve that, or how can we secure or give the interviewer more confidence that we do not have that experience, but we will work for it?
To reiterate that back, he is frustrated. This individual is frustrated with the lack of early positions, early career positions. We've talked about that a few times on the podcast, Alex, where it's tough because we're at the forefront of this like industry, and so companies need to hire like kind of the best of the best, if you will, because we're building the foundations right now. And those early career openings generally come as the company has grown, found product market fit, is building a company that's starting to scale. And so what we hear a lot on the podcast is, hey, I'm just making that career transition into Web3, and there are no early career positions. How do I get started? But this also goes back to what we were just talking about, right, Chris? With
Yep, that's right. Yeah,
yeah,
for me, my first advice is ignore any of the requirements. Apply anyways. Send your work, send your resume, but send your work. I mean, that's the thing, is if you're active in the community of company that you're interested, that has some openings, be active in the community, try and show some work, do a project on your own, build a project, and ignore the requirements. Send the thing. Here's a link to something. I know you want 7 years experience. Web3 is such a new, like, I don't know what they want 7 years of experience in. I mean, a lot of the blockchains are built in Rust. Rust has barely been usable for 3 or 4 years in this industry. The EVMs are always changing. Most of the smart contract platforms are constantly changing. So, that 7 years seems a little extreme. But that being said, ignore it. Build something. Send it to them. Say, hey, I may not have this much experience, but please check it out and see. I'm very passionate about the space. I'm a hard worker. I learn very fast, and give me a chance to impress you. And even just offer, say, hey, maybe you could even try me on a contract basis, or maybe say, hey, look, give me a project to do. I'll do it for free. Let me just show you what I got. And that should help. Not all the time, but people like that passion, because if 99% of the candidates just do, submit the resume, don't do anything extra, don't make an extra effort, then, like, if you're in that 1% that sort of rises to the top because you're getting attention, that's a thing. At least they'll give you a chance. Maybe you don't have the skill sets and maybe it's not going to work out, but you should do everything you can to get their attention and rise above the noise, and at least try and get your foot in so they can at least evaluate what you do have.
Alex, any opinions?
I agree with Chris. Yeah, ignore everything. I mean, I've worked on, they call them unicorn roles, where it's got to have all these different things and certifications or education and experience. And then the perfect candidate, who again has the right attitude and the right background, comes in and they throw all that away. So don't let that hold you back. And Chris even said it himself, right? Like, there's some teams that have the ability to create roles based on your experience. So there may not even be a job posting, but if you do the right things to get in front of, founders like Chris or others, you could, build your dream job right in front of you and not even have to worry about how much years of experience that some company is looking for. So yeah, I agree. Throw it all away, and be persistent, because like you said, most people just apply and wait. You want to be the person that does more.
Yeah, and I hate to even say this, but this comes from traditional, like, outbound lead generation. Stalk people on LinkedIn maybe and say, hey, look, I'm really, find a developer that maybe works on that project or whatever it is, another marketer or whatever you're going for. Just ping them and say, hey, like, is there any advice you can give me? I really like the work that you're doing. I would love to work on a team like what you're building. There's lots of ways to at least try different angles to get your foot in the door and get noticed.
My dog wants to be on the podcast today, guys. Like
Nice.
like they do every week. So next question we have is from Hiba. She is an intern working for 2 Web3 startups at the same time and finishing her master's degree. And she's also having a hard time finding a job in the marketing space. She asks, what are some ways that I can tailor my resume to show off my Web3 experience?
My advice is start TikTok account and do all your marketing stuff TikTok. Just market for the companies that you like. Do extra marketing. Even if you don't work at the company, create marketing for them. Be in it. Be your own self-assigned ambassador for the company you want to work for. Go make videos, and that's how you get attention. Just you don't need permission. Like, to me, it's the resume is almost dead. It's like you don't need permission to go and start doing it, and then show them, hey, look, this is what I can do for you if you like it. And here's, I did all this for free. And again, the amount of effort for some of these things is relatively minimal in the grand scheme of things. So that's my advice. And again, I think it's just, if all you're doing is you're sending a resume and you're looking to stand out on just your resume, it's not going to happen. The only way you're going to stand out, and it's late. It's so lazy, especially by bigger companies, is they sort resumes based on like what college you went to, what's your alma mater. Like, you need to go a step above. You need to do something that nobody else is doing.
Who's that girl that was making those TikToks where she was redesigning a bunch of brand logos?
Thinking that.
Were you thinking that? God, and she ended up getting, and for her, she ended up getting brands commenting on those posts or on those videos saying, do ours. And then she started getting like actual contract work and deals out of it. But the whole shtick of it was that she was designing like awful logos. Like McDonald's would never in a million years use that logo, but it was funny, and it gave her like a platform to get those companies' attention. And so we'll drop her socials in the description below too, because seeing her journey was amazing. Going from like, I'm redesigning one logo for this company that I like, and then all the way up to probably like at least 100 videos now, all of her literally just designing
and it's great
new logos
for that person. Like, look, like if you're all about marketing, grow your own audience. Like, literally, like, you can do this by trying to get a job somewhere, but grow your own audience. Do the work that you're going to do for yourself. And marketing is social media. Period. Like, don't bother with anything else right now. Just focus on social media, create content. Like, that's my best advice.
Well, Alex, do you have any other hiring related questions or topics you wanted to cover in today's episode?
No, I love that. I think that was a good way to end. Just, again, throw everything away, start TikToks, start getting out there. It's like, that's what people need to do, right? Like, leave the Web 2 job search in Web 2, right? Like, Web 3 is much different. And good to hear from someone that's built a few different times and continuing to build, that it's working for you, right? Like, the proof is in the pudding for the people that you've hired and the teams you've built. So yeah, for anybody listening, keep going.
Yeah. And so, Chris, if there's anything else you want to plug that we haven't covered in this episode, any new releases you can tease us with, any upcoming roles that you're looking to fill, floor is yours. Mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks so much for having me on. This is a great podcast. I love the format and everything you're doing. I'm definitely now a fan. Like, I've just discovered you guys and super excited. Oh, see, the dog agrees. It's fantastic. BlockJoy.com, definitely worth checking out if you are getting into Web3 and you're a developer and you want to run your own nodes, or you want to see how Web3 infrastructure is going to work. You're going to learn a lot by doing that. And yeah, I just think, for anybody that's looking for a job that's having a problem and struggling, just keep at it. Web3 is really about, show your work, get out there, learn about these different projects, be involved in these different projects. You have more tools at your disposal than ever before in history. So you have everything you need. Just go out and do it. Take a leap. Don't be chicken. Just go for it.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Last thing to plug for Metaintro. If you are at Consensus this upcoming week, make sure you come by the press room and say hello to us. Brad and I will be filming another season of Games with Web3 Friends. My dogs will not be there, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'm sure they'd love to make an appearance. But till next time. Well, Chris, Alex, thank you so much. And to everyone that's listening, we'll see you next week.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.